Chloe teased Isabella with a bright smile as she helped her prepare for the emperor's return.
Your Majesty looks absolutely stunning today. Surely the Emperor will be utterly captivated by you.
Chloe, you cheeky girl, mind your words.
Inside, Isabella felt as if her heart was coated with honey. 3 months ago, Alexander led his troops to the battlefield, and just a few days ago, the joyous news arrived that the last city had been conquered. Today was the day he returned triumphantly, and naturally, she was overjoyed. As the Empress, Isabella couldn't go out to the streets in advance. She could only welcome him with the ministers at the palace gates. From afar, she saw the imposing figure leading the procession on a tall horse. The next moment, her smile froze. A lively and beautiful face peeked out from behind Alexander, her eyes full of curiosity. Many of the older ministers around couldn't help but gasp.
Welcome back, Your Majesty. May I ask who this lady is?
Alexander saw Isabella and the joy on his face faded slightly. He instinctively protected the woman behind him.
Her name is Diana. She saved my life. In 2 days, I will marry her and make her my noble consort.
Isabella clenched her sleeves tightly, feeling a sharp pain in her head. Not now. Not this time.
Your Majesty, have you forgotten the promise you made to me?
Isabella, stop causing trouble. Your position as Empress will remain unchanged.
Isabella's head throbbed more intensely, and the world spun around her. She couldn't hold on and fainted. In a daze, Isabella heard a melodious voice like a songbird's.
Oh dear, is the Empress angry? But Your Majesty, you are the Emperor. Surely you can take a consort if you wish? It's my fault for appearing so suddenly. Your Majesty, please go check on the Empress. I'll be fine.
A wave of sorrow washed over Isabella. She knew that from this moment on, everything had changed. When Isabella woke up again, the hall was quiet. The palace maids didn't dare to make a sound. Chloe looked at her with red eyes.
He didn't come.
Isabella understood completely. Chloe bit her lip and dismissed the palace maids.
Your Majesty, you have been unconscious for 2 days.
2 days?
Isabella had a weak constitution and had fainted for an entire day before, but this was the first time she had slept for 2 days.
The Emperor came on the first day, but after that.
Chloe fell silent. Returning victorious, one day to cleanse, one day to offer sacrifices to the heavens, it was understandable that he couldn't be by her side. But tomorrow, he is getting married. Is he really that eager? Her head seemed to start hurting again.
By the way, Your Majesty, Dr. Owen asked me to give this to you and not let anyone else see it.
Chloe handed Isabella a piece of paper. Reading its contents, Isabella felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Dr. Owen said there was something growing in her brain. Dr. Owen said her recent symptoms were exactly like those her grandfather had before he passed. Dr. Owen said she might only have 3 months left. A huge wave of fear surged in her heart.
Where's Alexander? I need to see him.
The first person she thought of was Alexander. But Chloe looked at her with a troubled expression. All her panic instantly calmed, replaced by a coldness that rose from the depths of her heart. She looked at the tightly closed palace doors.
Your Majesty, the Emperor is concerned about your health and has ordered you to rest in the hall for 3 days.
Rest? More like confinement. He's afraid she'll ruin his wedding. Isabella felt disheartened. She suddenly understood. A few years ago, due to an accident, her health deteriorated. In the 2 years since their marriage, even their conjugal relations were rare. And the girl named Diana was so lively and charming. So different from her. But why couldn't he wait just 3 more months? That way, until her death, she would only remember his kindness and his devotion to her. That night, Alexander came. Before Isabella could be happy, she saw Diana by his side.
I heard you woke up. Diana insisted on seeing you. She means well, Empress, don't let her down.
His words were gentle, but his expression was full of warning. Isabella's heart sank halfway.
Don't be so serious, Alexander. The Empress is a patient now.
Diana pouted, not at all afraid of his imperial dignity. The gloomy palace seemed a bit livelier with her chatter.
Empress, don't be angry. Rest assured, I know your story with Alexander. I won't compete with you for him.
Diana looked at Isabella with admiration.
I also like Alexander very much. As long as he can give me a little bit of love, that's enough. You won't disagree, will you?
It felt like something was stuck in Isabella's throat. She looked at Alexander, who was gazing at Diana with a smile and affection. Wasn't there a time when he looked at her like that?
What if I don't allow it?
Empress, you're being unreasonable.
Alexander's voice turned completely cold, and Diana looked even more helpless.
I'm sorry, Empress. If you really don't like me, I won't become a noble consort. As long as I can stay by Alexander's side, that's enough. Please, I truly love him.
She looked humble, and the next moment, Alexander held her in his arms, wiping away her tears. It seemed like Isabella was the villain tearing them apart.
Empress, I've been away from the palace for 3 months. Have you forgotten who is the master of this palace? Reflect on your actions in the hall for the next few days.
Less than half a month later, Alexander stormed into Isabella's palace.
Sophia, what do you mean by this?
He stood before her, furious.
Why is your majesty so anxious? If Grand Tutor Yuan sees this, he might just report you.
With a slight smile, Sophia displayed the dignity of an empress. She saw a hint of surprise in his eyes, followed by a deeply furrowed brow. They had been childhood sweethearts and had gone through a lot together. In private, she never put on the airs of an empress. Most importantly, she had been extremely well behaved these past 2 weeks. She hadn't even caused any trouble for Diana. She had kept her palace doors tightly shut, and he rarely had the chance to see her. Perhaps the novelty of a month had worn off, and he finally remembered her. He looked at her for a long time, then suddenly sat down and sighed deeply.
Sophia, I know you're unhappy with Diana. I know I've wronged you, but all these years, the pressure has been on you.
Sophia smiled at him, successfully making him too embarrassed to continue.
Your Majesty, you're right. That's why I specifically asked the Ministry of Rights to arrange a selection. Why are you still unhappy?
That's right, no one expected it. Just a few days ago, Sophia made a grand request for the Ministry of Rights to announce the Emperor's selection of new concubines. The entire capital was in an uproar. No wonder. The infamous jealous woman finally understood her duty as the mother of the nation.
Sophia, I know you're angry, but Diana is different. I promise, there won't be a third person, okay?
He approached her and took her hand.
You will always be the one I love the most. We've been through so much together.
Sophia felt a slight loss of focus. Yes, they've been through so much together. From being a hostage in an enemy country to the struggle for the crown prince back home, and then the difficult task of defending the nation. Unfortunately, everything had changed. Her smile became distant and gentle again.
All right, it was my fault for confining you earlier. I was impulsive.
His expression softened completely, and his eyes showed the familiar affection she once knew.
Be good, Diana is still young. Can you be more accommodating to her? Just for my sake.
Alexander seemed satisfied, probably thinking her smile was an agreement. But after he turned and left, not only did her gaze gradually turn cold, but her heart also sank deeper into the abyss, unable to escape. Perhaps for a moment, she regretted it.
Why are there so few ice blocks this year? Chloe questioned the young eunuch.
There are only the Empress and the favored concubine in the harem. The Empress doesn't need so many ice blocks, giving some to the favored concubine is just right.
The young eunuch's attitude seemed respectful, but the arrogance and disdain in his eyes were unmistakable. Oh, another person currying favor with Diana.
How can that be? The Empress usually.
Chloe.
Sophia lazily called out, and Chloe immediately stood behind her. Sophia scrutinized the young eunuch and smiled.
I am the Empress. Do you know what that means? The mistress of the palace. Where do you get the audacity to arbitrarily alter the allocation meant for me?
Her tone became stern. The young eunuch finally seemed to realize that no matter how favored the concubine was, her position as empress was firmly above hers. Perhaps she couldn't do much to the favored concubine, but he was just a young eunuch. He became terrified.
I am not unreasonable. The allocation for the favored concubine is sufficient.
A wave of fatigue washed over her, and she didn't want to say more. Chloe was still indignant on her behalf.
Chloe, have you forgotten who your lady is?
Sophia laughed.
Your lady dared to accompany a mere hostage to gather followers when she was young. Later, she also braved bandit dens and evaded pursuers. Alexander may have forgotten, but have you? I am the legitimate eldest daughter of the northern general.
Sophia thought it was time for the long-hidden Golden Order to make its appearance. That night, Isabella had Chloe send a message outside the palace.
As expected, it was almost intercepted. If it wasn't Alexander who did it, then it must have been Diana.
Using a two-pronged approach, their people came up empty-handed. Isabella's message had already left the city.
I've never been one to be bullied. I was known for my fiery temper since I was a child. But for Alexander, I changed myself, wanting to be the perfect wife in his life. But does he deserve it?
Diana's temperament was extremely impatient. When one attempt failed, she resorted to crying and making a scene.
Sister, I know you don't like me. I've tried my best to stay out of your way. But why do you have to withhold my share? Can't I just live peacefully in the palace?
Diana's words were calculated. Alexander soon rushed over in a hurry.
Sophia, don't bully Diana. She grew up in an ordinary family and doesn't understand many rules. It's not intentional.
The first thing he said was to defend Diana. Isabella propped her chin, smiling at the pair of lovers. Seeing him, Diana quickly explained the matter of the shares.
Sophia, when did you become so petty? It's just some ice shares. You used to enjoy so much. What's wrong with giving Diana some now?
Your Majesty, you know my health is poor. I can't endure extreme heat or cold and really need those ice blocks.
This sentence seemed to trigger something in Alexander, and his expression became impatient and annoyed.
Is your health the only thing you can talk about?
He never used to be like this. Now, he's too obvious.
Sophia, why can others manage with less ice, but you have to be so delicate? You're much older than Diana. Can't you be more mature and stop using your health to seek my attention? Don't you know my feelings for you?
Isabella's poor health was because of Alexander. Tears suddenly fell.
I didn't mean that. I just want you to be more tolerant. Diana's family all perished in the war. She's very pitiful.
I'm tired. please leave.
Alexander knew he had said something wrong and was a bit anxious. But then he looked at Diana in his arms.
Fine, you, take a good rest. I'll come to see you later.
The palace door closed, and Isabella took the handkerchief Chloe handed her, gently wiping away her tears.
Your Highness, you have that incurable condition and really need more ice to maintain the temperature and make medicine. If you lack that, share.
Chloe had been by Isabella's side since childhood and understood her relationship with Alexander better than anyone.
Look, my heart is so cold. Do I still need ice?
Looking at the tears on the handkerchief, Isabella's smile grew wider.
Alexander, I've never been a kind woman. Betray me, and you'll pay the price. Tears? They're just for myself.
The hatred in Isabella's eyes even made Chloe afraid. Perhaps I was too quiet, too compliant. Or maybe the novelty had worn off. Alexander had recently started visiting me more frequently again. Of course, most of the time he would be called away by Diana. I must admit that girl's tricks are endless. She has boundless energy and always manages to bring Alexander countless surprises and amusements, what might be disasters for me. Just like now. There is a blooming peony in the imperial garden, specially prepared for me. We were strolling there, reminiscing about our youth for some reason. At this moment, we forgot about Diana, forgot about all the changes and oddities of these days. Until my favorite peony was shattered. Next to it was a flustered Diana.
I'm sorry, I just heard that the Empress loves peonies the most. I saw this one had few flowers, and I heard that trimming some branches could help.
Heartbroken, I rushed forward and pushed Diana away. This peony is an extremely special variety that I painstakingly nurtured from a young age. Most importantly, it was the last gift from my father who died on the battlefield. At this moment, all thoughts of patience and waiting for revenge were thrown aside. I held the peony, turned around, my eyes filled with needles.
Sophia, Diana didn't do it on purpose. Please don't be angry.
He first wiped the tears from Diana's face with a pained expression, then looked up at me, pleading. There was a hint of difficulty in his eyes. This moment brought me back to reality. Yes, he was in a difficult position. He knew too well the significance of this peony to me. Even so, the shattered petals reminded me of the helmet returned by my father's subordinates. The dried blood, like the broken petals. The nightmare of that day reappeared. A severe headache struck, as if someone was trying to saw open my head and crawl out. My vision darkened, and I suddenly remembered that I had fainted that day too. It was Alexander who patiently stayed with me, helping me through the grief. Even causing a bit of displeasure from the previous emperor. And now? A familiar warm embrace lifted me up.
Sophia? Sophia, are you okay?
He was extremely anxious. The dizziness gradually subsided, and I saw Alexander, hurriedly carrying me back to the palace. Seeing me open my eyes, his gaze was filled with joy. There was no trace of pretense. How strange. A month ago, when he was infatuated with Diana, he despised me. Now he seemed to have become the boy who only had eyes for me. Many times, I felt like I was dreaming. His erratic behavior was all my imagination. I longed for him to be the boy who always loved me.
You're awake. Sophia, don't be angry. It's my fault for not having the guards protected well. Please don't be upset.
He knew my body was too weak to handle strong emotions. The broken peony, representing my father, caused me immense sorrow. He was scared. I was a bit surprised. So he still cared for me. At this moment, a small part of me began to fantasize again.
How will she be punished?
I knew very well that I should speak gently now, and I could quickly win his heart back. But at this moment, the once clever daughter of the northern general became clumsy. Stubbornly, I chose the words I should never have said.
How will she be punished?
The worry on Alexander's face slowly faded, replaced by a hint of suspicion.
Your health is the most important right now. Let's put off the punishment for now, okay?
I need to know what price she will pay.
I firmly grabbed his collar. At this moment, I probably didn't look weak at all. He fell silent, his expression turning completely cold. Isabella knew Alexander wouldn't punish Diana severely. But she never expected that he wouldn't punish her at all. Diana stood before Isabella with a troubled expression.
Empress, I know it was my fault a few days ago, but now that I'm carrying the Emperor's child, perhaps the punishment can wait until after I give birth?
This statement hit Isabella like a punch, leaving her stunned.
After all, Empress, you've been married to Alexander for years without any children, and this is his first child.
Diana's face was full of gentle warmth, without a hint of provocation. Isabella's heart ached.
A child. This was the thing I felt most guilty about with Alexander.
Dr. Owen had long said that she might never be able to have children. At that time, Alexander held her and said it didn't matter.
At worst, we could adopt a child from one of my brothers.
Isabella believed him. Back then, she was so confident and proud. She knew Alexander wouldn't betray her, he loved her so much that he could even give up the throne for her. It was just a matter of raising a child. Raising one from a young age, what difference would it make from having their own?
Empress, I think with the best doctors in the world at your disposal, it wouldn't be difficult to nurture your body and give Alexander a child.
Isabella looked at Diana with innocent eyes.
If Alexander were to remain faithful to me, I would give him a child even if it took my last breath.
Speak of the devil. Alexander rushed in. He didn't even glance at Isabella, anxiously surrounding Diana. Isabella had never realized so clearly that not everyone was like her and her brother.
Alexander, it turns out, wanted a child of his own blood so much.
Alexander, I came to explain to the Empress why you didn't punish me.
Diana grabbed his sleeve, looking pitiful.
I know I did wrong, I just don't want the Empress to misunderstand you.
She then looked at Isabella.
Empress, Alexander really loves you. Please don't misunderstand because of me.
Alexander, who had been somewhat uneasy, visibly relaxed upon hearing Diana speak for him.
Isabella, I've already told Diana that you are the one I love the most, and she said she doesn't mind. She said she just wants to give me a child, even if it's for you to raise later.
Isabella suddenly laughed.
He wanted me to raise a child from such a woman? Was he trying to disgust me to death?
Someone, let the Emperor take a seat and rest.
As soon as she finished speaking, the seemingly frail maids in the hall immediately stepped forward.
Sophia, what are you doing?
Alexander's face changed. In an instant, he understood. Isabella had replaced the palace staff. These maids were actually her female bodyguards from years ago. The women in the bodyguard unit were all highly skilled. Alexander was no match for them.
Alexander, do you remember the promise you made to my brother? You swore you would never betray me, that even if we adopted a child as an heir, there would never be a child of your blood with another woman.
Alexander's eyes filled with terror. He knew what Isabella was going to do.
Do you remember? The first time I ended someone's life in front of you, I was only 12.
What are you doing? You can't touch me! Isabella!
Diana had already started screaming. Smack, Isabella slapped her across the face. Diana looked utterly incredulous. Just as she opened her mouth, Isabella slapped her again. Without mercy.
Does it hurt?
Isabella walked up to Alexander.
Don't worry, how could I forget the one who truly betrayed me?
3 or 4 slaps landed on the face of the man she once loved the most. Alexander's expression had completely changed. He was furious and humiliated.
How dare you? Sophia, you've gone too far.
Isabella's frustration boiled over as she confronted Alexander, her voice shaking with disbelief.
Your Majesty, have you forgotten the promise you made to me?
Alexander's face showed a hint of annoyance.
Isabella, stop causing trouble. Your position as Empress will remain unchanged.
Isabella's heart ached. What she wanted wasn't the position of Empress. She yearned for the young man who had once promised her unwavering love.
Is that what I wanted? The position of Empress?
Her head throbbed, and the world spun around her. She fainted, and in her daze, she heard a melodious voice.
Oh dear, is the Empress angry? But Your Majesty, you are the Emperor. Surely you can take a consort if you wish? It's my fault for appearing so suddenly. Your Majesty, please go check on the Empress. I'll be fine.
A wave of sorrow washed over Isabella. She knew that from this moment on, everything had changed. Isabella stood before Alexander, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and determination.
Your Majesty, have you forgotten the promise you made to me?
Alexander's face showed a hint of annoyance as he responded.
Isabella, stop causing trouble. Your position as Empress will remain unchanged.
Isabella's heart ached. It was never about the title. It was about the love they once shared.
Is that what I wanted? The position of Empress? I wanted the young man who promised me his unwavering love.
Her head throbbed intensely, and she fainted as the world around her spun. Alexander's actions severed the last bond between them, and the court officials began to take sides. Isabella decided to reveal Eleanor's identity to the court.
The Emperor has been bewitched by beauty. Empress Isabella, you must help restore order.
The Empress wields the golden token and her brother's influence. We must support her.
Alexander had repelled the Zhao army, and Isabella's brother captured several cities. Within the palace, Isabella's status was almost equal to the emperor's. She even attended court sessions.
During these special times, the Emperor and Empress should attend court together.
Alexander had no choice but to comply. His policies were often vetoed by Isabella, who proposed better strategies.
Fool!
Alexander glared at Isabella, who mocked him without hesitation.
Sophia, are you jealous? No matter how capable you are, it doesn't matter. Alexander loves me.
Eleanor clung to Alexander's arm, demanding his attention. Isabella coldly watched them indulge in romance while she handled most of the memorials. The only time they cooperated was when attacking the enemy. Autumn passed, and the northern border entered winter. Both armies struggled, and Isabella's wealth was spent rapidly. The best solution was to merge the two armies and share resources.
Sophia, is this amusing to you?
Isabella lifted her eyelids, casually reviewing a memorial.
Amusing? I'm just taking back what belongs to me.
Alexander gritted his teeth.
Zhao's last city remains unconquered. If this drags on, our army will suffer great losses. Don't you understand?
It doesn't matter, I have plenty of money.
Alexander remembered the golden token in her possession. After much hesitation, he spoke softly.
Sophia, we've been together for 13 years. I can't possibly have no feelings for you.
Isabella put down her brush and looked at him leisurely.
Eleanor was the first to help me, I can't betray her. But the bond between us won't be easily erased. Can we start over? Eleanor's health is poor, she may not have many years left. After these few years with her, it will be just you and me.
His words disgusted Isabella. She had less than a month left to live.
You truly disgust me, Alexander. From the beginning, you deceived me. Do you think I'm the kind of woman who is trapped by love?
Isabella stood up, her formal attire hiding her frail body, making her appear imposing.
Alexander, it doesn't matter if I can't have love. Now, I want something else.
How dare you?
The last pretense between them was torn away. Your Majesty, have you forgotten the promise you made to me? Isabella's voice trembled with disbelief as she confronted Alexander. His face showed a hint of annoyance.
Isabella, stop causing trouble. Your position as Empress will remain unchanged.
Isabella's heart ached. Was that what she wanted? The title of Empress? No, she longed for the young man who had vowed to love her unconditionally. The one who, with the late emperor's blessing, had brought the best imperial doctor to save her life. She knew the new noble consort was not just for saving Alexander. He had fallen for someone else. The world spun, and her head throbbed. She couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. In her daze, she heard a melodious voice like a songbird's.
Oh, dear. Is the Empress angry? But Your Majesty, you are the Emperor. Surely you can take a consort if you wish. It's my fault for appearing so suddenly. Your Majesty, please go check on the Empress. I'll be fine.
A wave of sorrow washed over Isabella. She knew everything had changed from that moment on. Alexander and Isabella found themselves locked in a cell together.
Did Eleanor do this on purpose, putting us together?
Despite their imprisonment, Eleanor continued to provide Isabella with medicine.
Sophia, I was wrong. Please take your medicine, won't you?
Alexander's hands trembled as he carefully brought the bowl of medicine to her lips. Isabella's vision was already blurry.
Get away.
She was weak, but her voice carried all the disgust in her heart.
Can't I even have a peaceful end?
Alexander fell silent. Soon, a wet drop fell on her face. He was crying. Isabella struggled to lift her hand and wiped away his tear.
Get away from me. Don't taint my path to peace.
Alexander turned his head, suppressing his sobs.
I was wrong, Sophia, I was really wrong. I fell in love with you long ago. It's my fault, I was blind and didn't see who truly loved me. Please don't leave. If you stay, I'll spend my life making amends. I don't want the throne anymore. You know, as a hostage, all I wanted was to survive. Now I know what I truly want. I only want you.
Isabella remained indifferent, eyes closed. He said a lot, but it meant nothing to her. She had lost completely, but in another sense, she had succeeded in her revenge. Alexander had nothing left and would be heartbroken by her departure. That was enough. Until one day, a familiar embrace lifted her up.
Sister, I'm late.
It was her brother.
Where are you taking her?
It's none of your business. Sister wouldn't want to see you.
Isabella smiled slightly. As expected of her good brother, he knew her thoughts. She nestled comfortably in his arms. Since her brother had returned, it meant Eleanor had been dealt with. How wonderful, in the end, she still won. In the following days, she was well taken care of and received the best treatment.
I didn't end Alexander's life, but he abdicated and gave the throne to me. I became the emperor so I could find the best healers in the world for you. Alexander waits outside your palace every day.
One day, Isabella felt particularly well and called her brother over. As soon as he saw her, he understood. He had grown into a reliable man, yet his eyes reddened in front of her.
He's outside. Do you want to see him one last time?
Isabella saw someone hiding by the doorframe. It was Alexander. She curled her lips into a slightly malicious smile.
I will never forgive him, never. Let me leave in peace, and may we never cross paths again in any lifetime.
The death knell rang. Alexander stood still, stunned. He knew she was gone. He thought his heart couldn't hurt anymore, but at this moment it felt completely empty. There had always been a sliver of hope that as long as she was alive, there was a chance to make things right. Now it was all over. She didn't even want to see him one last time.
Sophia, I'm coming to find you, wait for me.
With a serene smile, he took the poison and lay down outside Sophia's palace. The new emperor walked out and saw the body.
Take it away, don't taint my sister's path to peace.